Actor Charlie Sheen confirmed he is HIV positive. He told the Today Show that he was diagnosed with the virus 4 years ago, and he's going public for a number of reasons, including that he says he's been blackmailed for upwards of $10 million since he was diagnosed.
It's a hard 3 letters to absorb, you know? It's a turning point in one's life. I have a responsibility now to better myself and to help a lot of other people. And hopefully with what we're doing today, others may come forward and say, thanks, Charlie, thanks for kicking the door open, you know.
Well, Sheen says that he's only had unprotected sex with 2 people since his diagnosis, again 4 years ago, and they were warned ahead of time. He also said all of his partners knew about his diagnosis. Some of his former girlfriends, however, say he's lying.
Do you now think that he did have HIV, like right from the beginning, and know it and conceal it the whole time?
I watched right before I came in here. He said right on the interview, the interviewer asked him, what was this due during the tiger blood thing? Is this because of that? And he even admittedly said, he's like, well, I don't know if it's necessarily because of that, but this and that. So he just admitted right in that interview that that is the tiger blood time. That's when I was with him. I was living with him. We were sleeping together every single night.
And never said a word.
Never said anything.
And Bree,
ever.
I'm
clean, he told me.
Well, the question tonight, can Charlie Sheen go to jail, potentially even prison, for exposing these women to HIV? Joining us to talk about the legality of all of this is attorney Vikas Bajaj. Vic, always great to have you on the show.
Likewise, thank you so much.
All right, so the first question everyone's talking about, besides kind of the drama of all of it, is could there be some legal ramifications for him? He knew for 4 years that he was positive.
The answer is yes, and in the state of California, interestingly enough, there are 2 statutes. One statute is a very serious felony, which will send an individual off to prison for 3 or 6 or 8 years, depending on the egregiousness of the offense. The other statute is a misdemeanor, which carries a maximum punishment of 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. As a matter of fact, the city attorney's office here in San Diego, which is zealously prosecuting these cases, has actually prosecuted and convicted an individual earlier this year and actually sentenced him to 6 months in jail and the full $1,000 fine. The difference between the 2, the felony and the misdemeanor, that's a good question to ask, and the answer is intent. If you know you are infected with, in the misdemeanor area, any infectious disease, but in the felony area, specifically HIV, if you know you have HIV and you intend to infect your partner, that specific intent elevates it to a felony, and that will surely send you off to prison.
Right, which I think was the case that you were referring to. Let me ask you, Vic, this seems kind of like a case, in Charlie Sheen's case, that will be a he said, she said. He's already saying, look, I told my partners the entire time that this was an issue, and already you've got people saying, hey, he never told me. And by the way, you have a very, I don't want to say popular, but yes, popular actor who has said, look, I've paid upwards of $10 million for people to keep their mouth shut. So now you have this issue of paying people to, how do you prove it?
Well, and that's the issue, right? The issue is, how do you prove specific intent? How do you know an individual intended to infect someone else? How do you prove chronology? Well, in this day and age of social media and emails and text messages and things of that nature, you can bet your bottom dollar that the prosecutorial agency or agencies that are looking at this case will serve and actually deliver administrative subpoenas for all the social media and all the email and text information coming from Charlie Sheen's personal communication devices. That would be the move to make if I were the prosecution in this case. Now, as a defense attorney, I will tell you that that's all well and good, and pending a motion to quash and potentially having those administrative subpoenas thrown out for technical difficulties or issues, it is really a he versus she issue. When did this happen? Was he infected? And did he clearly reiterate that to his partners? Well, common sense may prevail here, and it would be hard-pressed, or I would be hard-pressed to believe that an individual who is informed that their sexual partner is infected with HIV would willingly engage in unprotected sex.
Right.
And of course, that's an element of the felony offense, and that is the engagement of unprotected sex.
Right, which is kind of leads to my next question, that, I mean, isn't the partner also, if they indeed did know, if Charlie's telling the truth and he said, look, I've got the virus, and the partners are saying, okay, well, I still want to have sex with you, and they choose not to use protection, well, they're kind of at fault too, right?
Well, they would be at fault under those set of circumstances. I'm hard pressed to believe that anyone will come forward and say I willingly engaged in it. At the end of the day, practically speaking, I hate to say it, but it really is a feeding frenzy. When we have these celebrities that are in the spotlight in a negative way, Bill Cosby, for instance, it seems like every single time we read the paper, there's a new accuser. And in this case, I do not believe we will be surprised if we see dozens of women coming forward and saying, you know, even if I wasn't infected, the fact that you could have been HIV positive made me go through a tremendous amount of emotional distress. And that, in fact, I believe will be the basis of dozens, if not hundreds of lawsuits that he's probably already been fending off, and that's the basis of the $10 million he's telling us about. So at the end of the day, it's probably a balancing issue for him. Do I end up paying for the peace and the quiet, or do I end up just attacking it head on, getting into court, absolving myself of guilt and find myself innocent, and deal with the stress of criminal law and criminal courts and move on to the dollars and cents and satisfy some complaining witnesses.
Yeah, even behind closed doors, we're all kind of wondering, like, what was the real reason for him coming forward? The money or lack thereof could be really his motivation for coming forward. Certainly, he might have opened Pandora's box, as we've heard. Vic Bajaj, always great to have you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.